am I just going to like walk away from this right now? And so then I went to go stand myself up. And it was in that moment I realized my body wasn't following.
It's not a simple thing. Pulmonary edema is like a big deal. If you're bleeding internally, it's just going to start filling up those cavities. Because if your lungs are deflated, there's no place for anything to go.
We fall over, and honestly, I wasn't sure if I was going to die or not. I just remember getting pulled over that edge, and I was like, this might be it for me.
Welcome back to the Breaking Point podcast. I'm sitting here with Clay Johnson and Savannah Barney, father and daughter. And in case you're wondering, yes, she is on wheels. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that she's gone through, the way that she, grew up, and kind of how she has adapted to the new circumstances in her life, and how it's been being the dad of somebody who's been through such a traumatic deal, and sort of how everyone's gone through it together. So I appreciate you guys coming, and look forward to chatting.
It's good to be here.
Good to be here. Thanks, Eric.
So your life before, tell me what you were doing, like before the accident, what you were doing, how things were, how you grew up, all of it.
Well, yeah, I'll just start from the beginning.
Yeah.
I played soccer my whole life. Started when I was probably 3 or 4 years old, and played all the way through high school, and then played intramurals with the co-ed boys and girls after that, just for fun. And then I also did track and field. My main event was high jump. I loved high jump.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was really bad at it my freshman year, actually.
Were you? Tell me, what was your height?
Like how tall was I?
What was your jump?
5 feet was like my good jump.
That's good, though.
Yeah.
5 feet, that's a great jump.
Yeah, 5 feet, I feel like for a girl is pretty decent.
Heck yeah.
It got me to state. And so,
that's huge.
anyway, my freshman year, I was so bad at it. And I just remember my coach, we had like 5 high jumpers at my school, because I grew up in Delta, Utah in high school. And so we only had like 120 kids in my class. And so we didn't have a ton of kids. But anyways, there's probably like 5 girl high jumpers. And I remember my coach pulled everyone aside but me and was like, guys, we've got to get you to state. We've got to get you good enough to go to state. And I was like, he didn't include me. I'm so offended. And so at that point, I remember thinking, I'm going to show him. And that same track meet, I was the only one that qualified for state.
That a girl? Look
Yeah.
at that.
And so I was like, I did it.
You're not your dad's daughter at all, are you? Isn't that competitive? There's no competition.
I know.
Yeah.
I just need something to push me that hard.
Yeah.
And then I also did cheerleading too. And I was a back spot in cheerleading. And then after I lived in Germany for 18 months because I went on a mission for my church. And then after that, got home. And my husband is really into bikes, dirt bike, mountain bike,
Anything with 2
climbing.
wheels.
Yeah, like anything with 2 wheels.
Yeah.
Loves to wheelie down the street like every day.
Oh, my goodness.
He's like, can I do a quick wheelie and then come back? I'm like, do whatever you want.
On a
On
motorcycle?
a motorcycle, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And a mountain bike.
And a mountain bike, like any of that.
Yeah.
And I'd never really biked growing up. My dad dirt biked, but I never really was a part of it. And he actually tried to get me to mountain bike one time before my mission. It was like, I've never looked so uncoordinated in my life. It was pretty bad. Luckily, I got some coordination back when I started hanging out with my husband, because he got me into dirt biking, mountain biking, and he actually called it like the Barney auditions.
The Barney?
Because my last name's Barney now. He's a Barney.
Oh, okay.
So
I thought you were
it
talking
was
about like
like,
a dinosaur.
I know, the purple dinosaur. That's what I thought of too. Like when I first heard his last name.
That's hilarious.
So anyway, he called it the Barney auditions, and that made me really nervous. I was like, oh, I've got to be good at this stuff. And so that's when I started really mountain biking and dirt biking. And the first time going out with his family dirt biking, I jumped the thing because I felt like I had to impress them. So they built the jump, and I was like, I'll do it. And so I jumped it. I landed it, thankfully, but
Heck yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
so,
Okay.
yeah.
So you're a high speed girl. I mean, that's just kind of you did your thing like at full speed, a lot of athletics, and then jumping dirt bikes and
yeah,
yeah.
lots of fun.
Yeah.
So that was just kind of my life beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Raising her.
Is incredible, because literally, like, we were talking about competitive. So she had a brother who is like 18 or 19 months older than her. And poor kid, he was great, and he was very athletic and still is. But literally the day he would do something, she had to do it the same day. So like she learned how to ride a bike. She was barely 3 years old and no training wheels. But her brother did it, so she had to do it. Anything in tricks on the trampoline, she was just always very outgoing, energetic, focused, always been an incredible student. Never had to get after her about homework or anything like that. She was always just a great student and just really fun, really wanted to be involved. In fact, she would want, like I'd say to my son, hey, you want to go do this with me? And if he didn't want to, I'll do it, Dad. She was always ready to go,
That's
you know,
awesome.
for anything outdoorsy or athletic. She loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you guys, and as far as like relationship goes, you guys been pretty close throughout, or is it just sort of like, hey, how you doing when you see your dad, or I don't know. Like for me, my daughters are some of their. I have 4 daughters,
Yeah.
and the first one will come up and hug me anytime she sees me. The second one every now and then. The third one more often than the second one, and the fourth one, I think she doesn't even care if I'm alive. So like it's
Just so different.
yeah. So like how is the relationship with you guys growing up and all that?
I think, well, you go ahead. It's like the kids always joke, like Savvy's the golden child, Savvy's Dad's fave, but we've always been close.
Yeah.
And have really gotten along our whole life.
I just remember my dad would go out in the yard and wear an outfit. And I remember one day he had like this white t-shirt and camo shorts on. And I remembered I had camo shorts. So I went upstairs and I changed into my white t-shirt and camo shorts to go hang out with my dad in the yard so we could twin.
That's
But,
awesome.
yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, we've always been pretty close.
That's awesome. So yeah, that's, and I have the same relationship with my oldest daughter. She wouldn't even sleep. Like she didn't nurse from her mom because they just were too at odds with each other from day one.
Yeah.
She would sleep if I held her and sang to her and fed her a bottle. And it's just kind of been that way since, she just had to break up with a boyfriend and she slept in my bed for 2 nights because she was so sad that she just slept like laid in my bed with me and my wife, because it's, when you have that bond with your daughter or with your dad, when you feel
comfort.
Yeah, it's a comfort. And I think it's a comfort for the parents too. Like for the, like to have that,
You want to feel needed, and
I love all my kids exactly the same, but they all need me at different levels.
Right.
And it's nice to know that like one of them at least, is like, hey, that guy's pretty cool.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
So okay, good. So I like that. And so you were like you said soccer. My daughter's a captain of the cheer team, by the way. One or
nice.
the other. So she's a back spot also. So
Tall?
She's tall and
Okay.
strong.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it takes, right?
Yes.
do
Yeah, to
that-
be back
that
spot.
job. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I see all these things, and she's walking around sore. Legs are sore. Everything's always sore because she's just constantly moving and doing stuff. It's a hard thing. But you grew up just essentially everything you did was you were up on your feet
Yeah,
doing something.
all the time.
Yeah. Or unless you were studying.
Yeah, unless I was studying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me, before all this happened, did you ever have trouble? Because your dad's super positive. Like every time I see him, it's just positivity. I imagine he has bad days, like everybody, but he's like Mr. Positive. So is that kind of how you've lived your life, or did you ever have struggles as a teenager? I think maybe every teenager does with feeling down, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I totally had struggles as a teenager feeling down. And honestly, if it's okay to talk about, my parents went through a divorce when I was 11. And there was a lot of things that went on in between there that like I struggled with. I struggled with my parents not being together anymore. And I struggled with feeling alone a lot. And just kind of like, who do I talk to about this stuff? And so, yeah, I did feel down. But also, I don't know, I feel like I have always tended to be like, okay, but what can I do right now? What can I do to make my life better right now?
What can you control?
Yeah, what can I control right now?
Yeah.
And I've tended to always focus on that when I'm feeling down and have struggles. And you have regular struggles in high school too, like your boyfriend broke up with you, right? You're gonna have a hard time with that. And you know what? I cried during those times. And so, yeah, you have those typical high school stuff as well.
Yeah. But yeah, so I've been divorced a lot, married a lot. I'm on my 3rd marriage right now. And so all of my kids, with the exception of the last one, have gone through that. So, my parents were divorced. I think it's kind of, one of those things sort of traditionally handed
Hardest
down.
thing I went through until my own personal divorce. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very challenging. Yeah.
So as a kid dealing with that, it's, the back and forth and going to, one person's house and another house and, all the kind of stuff. That is draining. And I never realized it because my parents divorced when I was really young. So I don't actually remember a whole lot about them being together. I was like 5 when they separated, right? So, but I see my daughters and my son and both my sons, they have these struggles, and it's sort of it's different than what I went through because they were older, like you. They were 11, 12 years old, at least the oldest one when that happened. And she's my daddy's girl, and but even now, she still will count like the anniversary, like you guys would have been together for this long.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
This year. You know what I mean? So there's a struggle there that that's all the.
And I think a lot of kids, like my parents, there was always this kind of fascination in the back of my mind, like, what if they get back together? What if somehow they, there is kind of that.
Yeah.
For a lot of years, I had that, as a teenager and kind of even growing up, even my young adulthood, kind of wondered if that would be a possibility. And, everybody wants that kind of ideal, I think, sometimes, or daydreams about that ideal sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then, that kind of like, it's sort of a breakup again when you realize this is not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
And then I realized, like, holy crap. They would just kill each other, so there's no point anyways. That's,
it was for the best. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like that comes later though, like when you finally have that realization.
Exactly. Like I was older when I realized, like, man, it's a good thing they're not together because it would have been ugly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think also, like, for me, and I think like 2 divorces, 3 wives, there is a common denominator there, right? And it sort of like woke me up to think about, like, where do I need to tune myself up? Like, what am I doing that gets me to this point? You know what I mean? I think there's always things you can control, but if you don't take the time to, like, really talk about or think through what you can control at that moment and, like, analyze who you are and what you can do better, then you just sort of fall into the same traps and routines. And I can imagine, like, having that discipline to say, what can I do when things are bad? You sort of already developed that, right? So then you have this accident. Do you mind talking about that a little bit and, like, how that happened? And then I would imagine that trying to stay positive and what you can control would have gone a long ways toward helping you rehab and all the things, right? So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So it was last year, April 20th of 2024. And I'm a part of a religion where we like to get together with the youth and do a bunch of activities. And so my father-in-law is in charge of planning some of the activities. And so he had this big group going. It was about 40 kids. And he was like, could you guys come with me? And my husband had to be on a work trip. I was like, yeah, I'll go with you. And we're doing a slot canyon. It's called Robber's Roost. It's something I've done probably 7 times before. And my husband and I always work the second rappel. I was like, I'd feel comfortable working the second rappel if you want me to go with you. And so he was like, great. And I was like, great. And so I didn't actually know any of the kids either. They weren't part of my ward where I go in my area. And so anyway, so we get there and it's going great. And the first rappel, we get down there and each leader who was there or each guide was assigned to a certain rappel. So like I said, I was the second rappel. And so we get to the second rappel, and there's actually a group of about 14 people before us. And so we're just sitting there waiting for them to go down. And then it was our turn. And I don't know if you know the difference between a natural anchor and a bolted anchor. But a natural anchor, you have webbing, and you build the anchor naturally. You can't put bolts into the wall and bolt it in. So this one in particular was wedged deep within a boulder there. And for rappelling, what you do is you connect the ropes that you have with whatever device or knots you want to do to this anchor, and you throw them over. And the plan is one of my family friends, and still right now best friend, one of my best friends. He's about my dad's age though, but we just say we're connected for life now.
Yeah.
But anyway, his job was to go over the edge first. Because when you're rappelling, we have a lot of newbies with us. You have a brake hand when you're going down the rope. And sometimes when you're a newbie, you forget that you're supposed to brake with that hand and you let go. And so if there's somebody there at the bottom, they can pull that rope and it'll stop you where you're at. And so that was his job. And my job's going to be at the top. I'm going to connect all the kids to their belay devices so that they can go over the edge. And then for safety, because I'm going to be reaching down over the edge, picking up ropes, I connected myself to that anchor with something called a daisy chain. And so we're getting ready, and there's a part on the second rappel where it kind of dips underneath itself. And so you get thrown against the rock a little bit before you get thrown under, and then you can keep going. It's kind of it's a little awkward at that part, I'm not going to lie. And so he goes over and he's about to get at that part, and he gets to it and he folds against that rock. And in that moment, there was a loud sound that came from where the anchor was held. And I knew in that moment, this is coming out. And within a split second, that boulder stood completely up. The webbing came out from that boulder. And my friend Bronson, he fell. And because I connected myself to that anchor for safety, I got pulled over the edge by his weight with him. And so we fall over. And honestly, I wasn't sure if I was going to die or not. I just remember getting pulled over that edge. And I was like, this might be it for me. And I blacked out because I front flipped over myself when I got pulled over the edge. And I just remember I started thinking again. And I was like, okay, I'm thinking in my mind right now. And I'm religious. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to see Jesus right now, or I'm going to see dirt. And I'm not quite sure which one it is. Yeah. And so I start thinking to myself, and I opened my eyes. Dirt. I was like, yes. Okay. Yeah. Hallelujah.
I'll take dirt.
Yeah, I'll take some dirt. And so then I started thinking to myself, I work in the medical field a little bit, so I know a little bit about what to do in those situations. And I was like, okay, I'm going to give myself some concussion questions. I'm Savannah Barney. It's about 1 p.m., I think. We're at Rubber's Roost. I just fell from a cliff. I think I'm mentally here. I don't think I have a brain injury. And so then I kind of looked at my arm. One of my arms was just kind of like laying funny in the dirt. And I was like, oh, shoot, did I break it? And so I start moving my arms. I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'm like, am I just going to like walk away from this right now? And so then I went to go stand myself up. And it was in that moment I realized my body wasn't following. And I remember reaching my hand down my body. And I was like, I can't feel this. I was touching my leg. And I couldn't tell that I was touching my leg. And I'm in the medical field enough that I knew I was paralyzed in that moment. I knew I had a spinal cord injury. And so after that, I'm like, I fell with Bronson. And so I grabbed Bronson's hands and I was like, how are you doing, Bronson? And he's like, I'm doing pretty good. His back hurt a little bit. The nice thing is when he fell, he landed on his back, but he had a bladder, like a water bladder in there. And so that kind of caught his fall. And it burst when he fell, but that did help him a little bit. But then he holds up his wrist and he was like, I think I broke my wrist. And he holds it up. And if you've seen Harry Potter, when he messes up his arm, it looked just like that. And I was like, Bronson, you definitely broke your wrist. Yeah. And then I just told him, I'm doing okay, Bronson. Like, I'm here, but I can't feel my legs and we need to get Life Flight here. And so he calls up and tells them we got to get Life Flight. And two people I told you we had a group of 14 ahead of us. There were two people who had not gone over that rappel yet, and it wasn't far in front of us, so they heard the whole thing. They came running back, these two people, and it just happens that they were wilderness EMTs. And so they were able to start checking me out, and they were like, can you feel this? Touching my leg, can you feel this? Going up my leg, kind of up my back until I could feel. And I was like, no, I can't feel that. And then they cut my harness off and they pulled up my shirt to see what was going on. And I had a huge hump in my back from breaking my back. Goodness. And it was kind of after that when I realized, holy cow, my chest is feeling really heavy. And I was having a hard time breathing. And it turns out after I went and got imaging done at the hospital that I broke several ribs and punctured both my lungs. And so I was breathing actually that whole time I was down in the canyon off of very little oxygen. And we ended up waiting down there for about 3.5 hours before Life Flight found us, got the right helicopter there, and before we could take off and head to the hospital.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just right off the bat, there's a lot of miraculous things in there, right? Like, I mean, my goodness. First of all, how high was it? It was pretty, like, I think it was 60 feet or something like that?
Not about that. It was about 35 feet.
35. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember what he had said. Still 35 feet. I mean, that's three stories.
Held off because it was like that slingshot effect of his weight kind of
flinging her down.
Yeah. Like the catapult effect. Yeah.
So 3 stories, you essentially jumping off a 3-story building.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, okay.
Yeah.
So there's that you didn't die right away. But miracle number one,
Yeah.
incredible, right?
Yeah.
You get down, there's no head injury.
Amazing.
No.
Number two, right?
Yeah.
Because
And
that's
no neck injury.
yeah, exactly, no
Yeah.
neck injury. That's incredible. Miracle number three, you're breathing, even though you have two punctured lungs.
Yeah.
Because most people, I mean, would fill up with blood and choke to death. Like that's just the thing. Like if you
Yeah.
puncture your lungs, it's not a simple thing. Pulmonary edema is like a big deal. If you're bleeding internally, it's just going to start filling up those cavities.
Yes.
Because if your lungs are deflated, there's no place for anything to go. So typically, it just ends up
Less
you
and
know,
less and less
yeah,
until
Yeah.
you're
you're just
Yeah.
suffocated,
Yeah.
or you get blood in there and
Yeah.
you suffocate anyways.
And so I do think it was a miracle that I could think well enough that whole time. I got to tell myself to breathe
Yeah,
because it was hard to breathe.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also as your back is broken and you're swelling up, that's putting pressure on all the organs and all the things that are in here, which is going to make it harder to function. Also, I mean,
Yeah.
so that's miracle number three. I mean, and then two wilderness EMTs happen to be the people that are just
Come
there.
back to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Miracle number four. I mean, my gosh.
Well, yeah, and there was a nurse that was in their group also that came down and was talking to her and asking her questions and making sure she was staying with it. And, just in fact, I think at one point, Savannah was like, I can only do short answers because, she.
I'm like,
couldn't-
yes or no answers.
Yes or
please.
no answers
Or
because
questions because.
their oxygen was getting low and she couldn't
Yeah.
say a lot of words. But that nurse staying with her the whole time was incredible. And then, the kids throwing down her jackets to keep her warm because the ground's getting cold and she's in a slot canyon and having conversations there. And when I met those people, it was hard not to just get emotional. Like, because they had done so much, like when the light flight helicopter came and it was blowing rocks off the top and stuff. And here's this nurse putting her jacket and spreading over Savannah to kind of shield her from the rocks and pebbles coming down and just the warmth and caring that was, from those people that were on site. There was just such a tremendous gratitude that I felt for that. And the fact that those people were there, knew what to do and knew how to help her. And she was able to stay with it the whole time was amazing.
Incredible.
And that nurse actually told me later on, she said, I wasn't planning on going on this trip, but I had a feeling the night before I need to go. And we left at 5:30 in the morning. And so it wasn't like you could decide we're going at 10 a.m., but it was 10:30, she said. And she's like, I think I got to go on this trip.
Wow.
And she was there. So
That's amazing. So you're laying there, you're kind of like going through your checklist of how your body's performing, right? And you're with it enough to do that. But clearly, like it's as you said, you knew I'm paralyzed. Mm-hmm. Were there any thoughts at that moment about how life was going to look going forward? Was there any sadness? Was there any like, holy crap, what about that stuck out? I mean, obviously, right now you're just sort of dealing. You're in survival mode. But I can imagine, knowing myself, I would probably still be very focused on how my life is going to be without the use of my legs.
yeah.
And so were those thoughts creeping in at all during that time for you?
Yeah, a little bit. I just remember thinking, I think I might be in a wheelchair the rest of my life. And I haven't had a lot of exposure to people with spinal cord injuries before or people who have lived their life in a wheelchair. We do have a relative who has spina bifida who has been in a wheelchair, but I haven't really been around her a ton in my life. And so I didn't really know how that looked. And I didn't know if I would be able to continue what I love doing with my life. I also thought, what is my husband going to think of this? But I also knew my husband's a really great guy. I knew he would love me and I knew he would help me and take care of me, honestly. But I did have the question, like, because I do want to be a mom one day. I was like, how is it going to look for me to be a mom? And I did have those thoughts go through my head. But because it was hard for me to breathe, I feel like that did take up most of my mindset was keep breathing, Savannah, keep breathing, Savannah. And so there was room for thought and I did have those thoughts. But
I don't want to get too personal, but is having kids still like a thing? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
So that's at least
We're all
that
thrilled
dream is
about
still
that.
there.
Yeah, we're like,
Yeah.
oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you never know with those situations. There could be a lot of damage that you know. So
For
that's
sure.
amazing.
It is
Miracle
amazing.
number 5 for crying
That was
out
one of my
loud.
first
I love it.
questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. So good. So, but right, it changes all that.
Yeah.
Being a mom, like trying to chase a toddler and
Yeah.
without the use of your legs is going to be a challenge.
Right.
That's just kind of, it's a different thing. So I can see those thoughts coming in. And for me, like, obviously breathing is prior to number 1, but I'm like, for me, I worry about so much severe. I have severe anxiety, and that's my really like. That's the reason why I would never leave my house if I could. Like I would just stay
If you
home.
could stay home.
You know, because so I start to worry about things, and so for me, I probably wouldn't have been able to stop. I would have stopped breathing because I was too focused on what my life was going to be like afterwards. You know what I mean? So at least you did that right.
Yeah.
You know, you had your priorities.
Priority number one.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, the thing that she said too, and that people were saying, she was asking questions, and her father-in-law was there, and she would call up like, "Todd, are you still there?" And it was just that comfort, and he'd say, he was emotional, like he would go behind a rock, and it was just very trying to keep his composure during this.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And so just that comfort of knowing that, but then also one of the things that Savannah said was she was really worried what word was getting back to her family and to her husband, and like what concerns and anxieties they may be having at that time, because she was there for that 3.5 hours, and like, do they know, or they were just kind of worried what they were going through and had heard and worried about.
So let's go there, because I remember I had just started here. I started here on April 1st. I hadn't even met you yet when the news came about all this.
Yeah.
Right. And so I didn't know Mr. Positivity over here at all. I didn't know anything about, like, this was all new to me.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me, like, when you hear the news, or, when your husband hears the news, how those things went.
Well, we were both out of town. Her husband in California, I was in North Carolina. We were there. My life, I've always been a mortgage guy. That's what I do. But I've also invested in real estate and businesses. And so we'd invested in a business, and we're out there for a grand opening, and it's going really well. And
Was this Crumble?
This is Crumble.
Nice.
Yes. So we're investing.
Yeah.
So we're out there for another location that's opening up, and great response, huge turnout, and we're just kind of like, high fiving each other. We're in this kind of euphoric moment. And
Who doesn't love a cookie the size of an apple pie?
I know, right? So big. I know.
it is amazing.
That guy doesn't eat sugar, for crying out loud. Like, he invests in a cookie store.
It's so funny because the rest of my wife loves it, and so many people love them, and they're just such a great dessert. They really are.
So
and always, like I said, I always have a bite or two. And so. So we're out there, but we're pumped about it. And her husband, all of a sudden the phone rings. It's her husband. And I thought, he must have forgot I'm out here or something. And so I send him to like an auto response text, and busy, call you back or something, And so, we're really in the heat of this. And he sends back a text. He says, "Okay, I just wanted to let you know, Savannah's on life flight. Don't know the details, but she was in an accident on the canyoneering or rappelling trip that she was on. And I'm trying to find out more." Well, I look at that text, and it's amazing how in those moments you can prioritize like that. None of that was going on around me mattered a bit. Like it just
like it vanished.
Just vanished. Just shut out. And it was like I just went to my partners that were there, and I said, "Hey, I've got to run. There's my daughter's on life flight," and I just immediately left. And it just clears out all the clutter. And so we went to the hotel. We're trying to find out more information. I immediately got on the phone with her husband. He didn't know a whole lot except that she was on life flight, and that he'd heard it was pretty severe. And so you're thinking you want to be positive, but you're worried about this life flight. This is serious. So we had to prioritize. We need to get home, and we need to reschedule our flights. And it was our anniversary the next day, and so we'd planned on staying a few extra days to celebrate and do some different things. And so it was like, okay, we need to reschedule. It was not an easy process getting through that with the airline company, but we did. And then we got about an hour and a half of sleep, and we had to be on the plane. And so we went to the airport, and we wasn't really sleeping. And you know how like sometimes you have a bad dream, and you wake up and you're like, "Oh, good, it was just a dream."
Yeah.
What was that in reverse? So you're like, wake up and you're like, oh no, this is real. And we had figured out before we got on that flight, my brother's in law enforcement, and he was able to get a little bit of intel. We knew it was serious. We knew that it was really serious. And so, but she hadn't passed away, which was good. So, but we just knew it was very serious. So you're just racing through that. We get on the flight and heading home, and we're just anxious to get there. And I think Seth got there, her husband, about an hour before us.
Yeah.
About an hour. He is doing the same thing on the other end in California. He's trying to get things prioritized. And he was like, "Man, it couldn't have gone smoother." I think he just went straight to the airport, didn't he? I went right up to the counter or something. And I did try to do it on the computer or the phone. He was like, "What?"
Well, I think his brother Danny got him a flight
Okay.
sooner to home. Yeah.
Yeah. So he just boom, went there. And
Nice.
anyway, we ended up getting there pretty similar time. He got there just a little before. And you know, we knew she was stable when we landed. We figured out she was stable, but it was serious. And so we got there, and, you know, you walk in, and Savannah is a positive person, and I'm just trying to keep my emotion in check. It's like, I just know it's serious, and I'm trying to keep it together, you know. You guys be strong for my girl.
Right.
And I walk in, she's like, Daddy. You know, and it's like, and so it was like, you know, just go there, and we're just talking a little bit, and I'm staying composed. I'm trying to be methodical and strong. And I think it was like, what, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes, and I just broke down. I was just like, just kind of lost it for a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
And so, but she was, the crazy part is, in the midst of all that, we'd go to the hospital, and she was just able to make the shift. So we could never get too down about it, because she never got too down about it. And the last thing I wanted to be was a wet blanket when I'd go visit her.